Hi, my name is Jonathan, and this is the vlog that I promised to give to Muslims about a message God has given me about the future of Islam. And it's imperative for every Muslim to hear this message from Allah. I'm going to do this vlog in two parts because it's a little long. But first of all, I'd like to read from the book of Acts, which is in the New Testament. This is Acts chapter 13, verse 41. Behold, you despisers, marvel and perish, for I work a work in your days, a work which you will by no means believe, though one were to declare it to you. Now, let me give you a little background about what God has been showing me over the past 3 years. Over the past 3 years, God has been giving me dreams and visions about a massive earthquake in the United States of America. Down the new Madrid Fault Line, there will be such a massive earthquake that half the United States of America will literally fall into the sea. And God will literally wipe off the USA from the face of the earth. This is God's judgment on America, primarily because of our foreign policy and because of climate crisis. God feels that the U.S. is such a destructive force on the planet, politically because of our foreign policy and because environmentally as well, because of climate crisis. So God feels like He's forced, basically, to destroy America to save the entire planet. And there's also a secondary reason for God's judgment, is because God's judgment on America is the sexual immorality of Americans and because of abortion. So how does this relate to Islam? How does the New Madrid earthquake relate to Islam? Well, last fall, God gave me a vision, and through that vision, after God gave me this vision, God started telling me that the New Madrid earthquake deals directly with Islam. Now let me tell you what the vision was. Last fall, I was praying about the New Madrid earthquake in the morning, earlier in the day, and then later in the day, while I was doing laundry, God gave me this vision. In this vision, I saw two massive nets. And both of these nets were filled with teeming and breaming fish. Millions and millions of fish both of these nets were holding. And both of these nets were suspended over the sea, over the ocean. And all the fish were active and the nets were dripping with water. And then both of the nets, they equally looked alike. Like, I could not tell a difference between these two nets. And I said to myself, both of these nets are the same. There's no difference. Right then, when I said that, God, the voice of God came and said, no, they're not the same. And right then, with the voice of God, there was a massive rip down the net, from top to bottom to top, down the net on the right. There was this massive tear down the net, on the net on the right in my vision, and the entire net of fish, the entire catch of fish was released back into the sea on the net on the right. And it created such a huge splash in the ocean because the entire catch of fish on the net on the right was released back into the sea. And right then, God told me, the net on the right, the net where all the fish fell back into the sea, the net on the right is Islam, represents Islam. Whereas the net on the left, which was still intact, represents Christianity. God says, this net is Christianity. And right then, the vision ended, and days and weeks after that vision, God started telling me that the New Madrid earthquake deals directly with Islam. God started telling me the New Madrid earthquake in the United States of America will be God's judgment against Islam as well as God's judgment against America, which kind of sounded bizarre to me when God told me that. The New Madrid earthquake, the one act of the earthquake that will destroy America, will equally be God's judgment against Islam. So I don't fully understand how the New Madrid earthquake alone will directly be God's judgment against Islam. But I'm just relating to you what God has told me, because a lot of this is a mystery to me. But what God has shown me is that the Twin Towers on 9/11 has symbolism. The one act at the beginning of the 21st century, the one terrorist act of the Twin Towers being attacked, represents God's judgment on both America and Islam. This one act of terrorism represents God's judgment on both Shia Islam and Sunni Islam. That's what God has shown me about the Twin Towers, the symbolism of the Twin Towers on 9/11. And what God has told me is that by the end of this century, by the end of the 21st century, there will be no more America and there will be no more Islam by the end of this century. What will happen following the New Madrid earthquake is that the Spirit of God, God's Spirit, the Spirit of God will flood the entire planet. The glory of God will be manifested on the entire planet after the New Madrid earthquake. And there will be such a massive spiritual revival around the entire planet that everyone will repent of their sins, will turn back to God, and this will be most pronounced in Muslim nations. It will be this spiritual revival after the earthquake will be most pronounced with Muslims. And God gave me another vision a few years ago relating to December 21st, 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar. God gave me this vision. In this vision, there was a dam, and there was a crack down the center of the dam from top to bottom. And God told me that dealt with the end, December 21st, 2012. And years after this crack down the dam, the entire dam burst. Now the reason I say that is that because God told me that that vision also relates to the spiritual revival in Muslim nations after the New Madrid earthquake. There will be such a massive spiritual revival among Muslims after the earthquake that every single Muslim will voluntarily and eagerly abandon Islam, and they will passionately embrace Christianity. They will embrace Jesus Christ as their Lord after the New Madrid earthquake. No one will force a Muslim to leave Islam. They will, by their own will, by your own will as a Muslim, you will leave and completely abandon Islam as a religion, and you will passionately receive Christianity. And Muslims, after the New Madrid earthquake, after this one act, one natural disaster, Muslims will abandon Islam entirely, and it will be absolute. Can't emphasize that enough. You will abandon Islam absolutely, and you'll never turn back to Islam. Islam will cease to exist as a religion forever after the New Madrid earthquake. And it'll be such a massive flood, like this dam that is broken, this crack down the center of the dam will completely burst. And what God has shown me is that you will not be able to stop the flood of God's Spirit, of the glory of God flooding Muslim nations. You will not be able to stop leaving Islam. You'll be so passionate to embrace Christianity, you will be so passionate to completely and utterly, absolutely abandon Islam that no one will be able to stop it. I see this flood, this flood that you cannot stop, that's from a breached dam. You will, by your own will, leave Islam. Right now, if you're a Muslim, you're probably saying that it's completely impossible because I will never leave Islam because you love Islam. But I cannot describe with words that your heart will be radically changed on that day. On the day after the New Madrid earthquake, your heart will be so radically changed that you will passionately abandon Islam and embrace Christianity. Now God has given me a number. 20,000. That's how many Muslims there will be at the end of the 21st century. And it will only decrease after the end of the century. Nations such as Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia, Libya will no longer be Muslim nations. At the end of the century, there will even no longer be a Muslim nation. There will be no such thing as a Muslim nation after the New Madrid earthquake. These Muslim nations, Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, Indonesia, and every single Muslim nation will be entirely a Christian nation after the New Madrid earthquake. And God will deliver you, God will deliver all Muslims from the bondage of Islam. Now I will go back to part two.